like your phone is killing your creativity? I know for me recently, I've noticed when I'm not being disciplined with my phone, I fall into this dark, deep rabbit hole of overthinking, comparison, negativity, pulling me further and further away from the present. That beautiful space where I can test out designs, I can explore color, I can experience the real world, which is exactly why I created this adorable, colorful froggy tutorial for you today. Hi creatives, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Lauren with Lauren Elizabeth Animal Art. I'm a working, certified art therapy practitioner and an independent pet and wildlife artist. Today's free tutorial will not only pull you out of that dark rabbit hole, but help you emerge back into color and creativity and beautiful paint. It's a soothing, art therapy-based, beginner-level tutorial where you can refresh your drawing technique, acrylic painting technique, even invigorate your understanding of color theory. So if you'd rather feel more positive, more uplifted, more present and creative, I have everything you'll need for this tutorial in the description box. Let's get started. All right, so the full drawing tutorial and a traceable, the reference, technique guide, a full list of materials, and the journal reflections are all in the download link below. I'm adding white, sky blue, this is purple and not violet, fluorescent pink, and cadmium yellow for the background first. Grab a palette knife if you have one. We're going to mix up our background colors first using white with sky blue and purple. Again, that's white, sky blue, and more purple than sky blue so that it complements those beautiful yellows that we'll add to the leaves. Now mix up enough, not only because we'll be coming back to these background colors, but also so we can paint our sides. Now creatives, if you're new to my tutorials, I like to call these open-ended tutorials. You can follow me every step, repeating the same decisions I make, or you could listen to your own creative nudges to apply a pattern, to use a different color, to add more paint, more texture, or less than me. This is your painting, make it your own, and have fun. I have a clean, damp, size 6 Arteza flat brush, my favorite brushes. I'm still using them since 2021, can you believe it? And so I'm going to dip into this and just test it out. Is this dark enough? Yeah, this is going to be dark enough. We'll work around these two leaves. Oh, what a gorgeous color. Oh, I just love it. Now, at any point, if I go too fast, be sure to use the pause or play button on your screen. And as we work on this background, let's take this time to get grounded, to focus on where our hands are, where our feet are. Take notice right now to how your hand feels holding the brush. Now, to help us stay here in the beautiful present, I'm going to ask you to turn off all notifications on your phone. Maybe turn it on Do Not Disturb, or even better, turn the phone off and watch this tutorial from your laptop or a TV screen. Now I'm going to paint my sides, and notice I stopped about there. Up from there, we'll be blending in slightly lighter pinks and violets. So the next few steps, we want to work at a steady pace so we can add those while it's damp. I'm going to pull in to some of this a bit more purple and a bit more white. So in a separate pile, using a little bit of our previous indigo, I'm going to pull in more white and more purple. A bit more white and a bit more purple. Excellent. And again, because we're joining it with the pink, so we want to work wet into wet down here too, and up here.
I'm only going to go on the side, upper right.
So I started a little more than halfway, leaving a gap to the left. Now this is a judgment-free zone in our space right here. No criticism, no judgment. So let's lower the stakes right now and enjoy the process.
All right, I'm going to wash off my brush because next what we're going to do is blend some pinks into these areas. So I'm going to pick up in a separate pile white with fluorescent pink. That's white and fluorescent pink. And then I'm actually going to add a little bit of a violet to it so it's an easier blend than just going in straight with this light pink. First starting up here and blending it. See how I'm just blending it in with the other color. And in order to go back to the lighter color, I have to wash my brush off. Make sure it's clean and damp so I can lighten up this area even more.
If you can resist the temptation here to not make it a perfect blend and allow there to be some brush strokes and texture, it can really help us be more creative when we allow things to be imperfect.
I'm going to jump to our mix of the purple with the pink, and this is what I'll use to paint in this little gap before that dries. And yep, we'll need to likely bring in more of our indigo into that. Once we've worked down into that more dominant color, we have to wash off our brush before we go back up to the lighter color if we want to lighten that up, because it'll just bring in some of that indigo up there, and we don't want that. So I'll pull in some more, even more of this light pink into the violet. Lighten that up. So I'm starting the lighter end and bringing it down, blending it down, but leaving some brush strokes there. Now before this dries, oh, wrong one. Look at me, silly me. Actually, I kind of like that. Oh, mistakes are good. I'm going to pull in some purple into here, some streaks of purple that are kind of subtle into this indigo.
Now another simple technique that I'm positive you already know, but we're going to practice it right now together, is deep breathing to help us stay here in the present moment. So a nice deep inhale through the nose and a long exhale through the mouth. Let's do that 5 times.
All right, so I have a clean damp brush. I'm going to work in some more white into this pink. I'll add more pink and more white to it. Working around the frog's eye now. Better to go over top that sketch than have to go back and remix this color. So no worries if you go over it too closely. And on the side. And I'll bring that over right above that right eye. To about there. Until we move to our next color. All right, so for our next color in a separate pile, we're going to do cab yellow and fluorescent pink and white to mix up a beautiful peach. We won't really need much of this. So I'll just mix up, that's again, cadmium yellow with fluorescent pink and white. And here we go. Oh, gorgeous. Such a beautiful orange, so vibrant. And that's so close to that pink, you know? Not in just proximity, I mean, but like it easily blends without mixing up a muddy color. I might have put a little bit too much, so I'm going to wash off my brush, go back to the light pink. I want to make sure it's clean and damp, and pull some more pink into that. It kind of makes it more of a pastel color that way too. Gets a bit more white in there, which is excellent. It'll make that frog pop and push forward even more. I'll take a little bit of that orange, add it to the side. All right, and here we go with our yellow. So I'm going to pick up some white in a separate pile, add some cadmium yellow to it. And blending into some of that orange to the left of it and over, but not all the way over because that's where I want to add even more white.
So I'm blending only a small section of this vibrant yellow, then we'll add more white to it.
I am moving into that orange a bit more, so it again kind of dilutes it, makes it a bit less vivid. I'm going to wash off my brush, add more white to this yellow. And that beautiful light yellow is what I'll use up until that leaf.
Now, the process is always filled with mistakes, and that's what helps us decide what we want to stick with, where we want to go, what we like, what we don't like. And this next step, I end up adding 2 colors here, but then change it later to a violet in this gap between these 2 leaves on the left. You can decide to leave it yellow and purple, or just yellow using the previous yellow, or all purple, or an entirely different color. So test it out. When in doubt, you can always paint over it once it's dried.
All right, so I'm going to pick up some of our darker yellow, okay? Add some just a little bit below this leaf. And then the tricky part is not blending too much violet into that. So I'm going to go back to our violet here. I'm going to do a little bit of blending, but not too much. From dark to light. I'm going to go back to my yellow with a clean damp brush. Bring that down into some of the purple. So we only have just a little bit of violet there, kind of half and half really, yellow and purple. And then I'll just paint my sides. Now this area just looks a little too, because it's so light, it looks a little bit too dark. I'm going to just add some more white, some fluorescent pink.
I'm also going to add a dab of that previous purple, a real small amount so that we can do a nice blend from left to right, the light value to the darker value.
Just carefully bring some more pink into that purple. And see how now we have that line? What I'm going to do is get my brush so it has a little bit of this pink left over and it's still damp, but using the dry brush technique, I'm going to just add a very thin layer over top that purple. There we go. I think it needed a bit more pink over there. I might even pull up a little bit of the purple. Added just a bit more purple in there. And then what if we did the same thing on over here? Pulling some of that pink down. I'm going to try it. But not too much. So I'll just use the dry brush technique with what little I have left on my brush. I'm going over some of those leaves. Hey, it kind of makes a beautiful shape. Add a little bit of the scribble effect to it.
So here I'm loosely scribbling my brush, wisping it back and forth to create a cool, neat design. It's subtle, but it's still a little bit more interest there.
Just some of it showing up, but not too much. Little accents here and there. I kind of like that.
Now I'm adding a bit more color magic with our mix of purple and pink. Add a few dabs, sporadic brush strokes, see what it looks like. Try to sit with imperfections. And then you can always paint over what you really don't like with the indigo in the lower right corner and the more purple indigo in the upper right. The areas that I did leave that are a bit more pink, I'll pick up more of that pink purple, add a little bit more touch of pink there.
I'm going to wash off my brush, and I might do that with the yellow. What if we added some accents into the purple, like a little bit?
This is me testing out that texture of yellow in that little triangle on the left side. But again, I end up making this all purple. But I am going to mix up a little bit more of our purple pink. That's fluorescent pink with white and purple if yours is dried. Another round of pulling out those pinks.
So I'm going to go back with the indigo.
Now I'm cutting around a bit of those pinks, but not too much. Little dabs here and there. Here's your little friendly reminder to take deep breaths, try not to hold your breath, and be kind to yourself.
I'm going to add a little bit more yellow on this side with just a little bit of the purple showing. Oh, and we forgot something, guys. We forgot some. So since we started the purple down here, I'm going to bring in this purple in between. So it's important that you kind of separate the stems. Here's a stem, here's a part of the leaf, and here's a stem. So we're going to have like 3 sections down here.
So in this middle section and the gap to the left of that stem will be this purple pink.
Then I'm actually going to pull in some indigo on this part, on this side of that leaf at the bottom. Mixing up just a little bit more purple. That's just white with some of our violet, our purple. I have just the tiniest little sliver there to let me know where that stem is. It's not very big.
Now with the indigo, and make sure we don't have any purple on our brush, I'm gonna lift up that little corner right here a little bit more. All right, so we're gonna move on to the leaves next. Be sure to let your background dry 5-10 minutes so you're not pulling that paint into the leaves. And when you're ready, we'll get started. Hi creatives, sorry to interrupt, but if you're somebody currently navigating anxiety, depression, trauma, addiction, since last year, I have been inching my way through a collection called Transformed by Hope. Every piece is a visual reminder that hope is living and that transformation and healing is possible from the inside out. This series of bold, bright, colorful cat, dog, insect, bird paintings not only connects with my past through addiction recovery, but also my present through a colorful art therapy-based process. Each piece documents my experience walking through life as a mama, as a wife, as an art therapy practitioner and artist, and my faith in Jesus. By downloading the PDF for this tutorial, you'll be the first to see this collection and get all the updates for my Etsy shop. That's on June 14th. Let's get back to it.
Next, we are going to work on the leaves with a single color first, a base color of orange. This is going to really pull out some of these blues. And we'll also end up putting some blues in the leaves with the green. So I'm going to wash off my brush. We're going to go back to this lovely orange here. I'll just mix up some more. It's like a peach we made with cadmium yellow and fluorescent pink and some white.
Definitely make sure you mix up enough. This is cadmium yellow, fluorescent pink, and white.
If you want to make it more orange, just add a bit more fluorescent pink to it. All right, let's test this out. Excellent. And here we go. We're just going to paint each leaf. And then this goes underneath those little fingers. You might need to use a detail brush for that. I'll save that for, I'll do the main part with the larger brush, and then I'll get around those fingers with a detail brush. I'm going to need a lot more paint. Here I go, just mixing up some more. And before I move on to the next one, I'm going to grab my size 0 round brush. Get this all the way up, almost all the way up, not all the way, but around those fingers. I am mixing up some more, guys. I'm going to need quite a bit more. So I'm just going to add white straight to this one. Add white there for later. Let's try it out. It's good.
Now, when I'm painting leaves, I often like to apply a base of orange or a base of yellow. Then to complement the oranges, I'll add some kind of blue to the background and or the animal. And to complement the yellows, I'll add a violet mixed in with the blue, or I'll add little accents in the animal. I like to keep that proximity close too, so it can really add that contrast. So just a little refresher. Orange and blue are complementary colors, just like yellow and violet, and red and green.
Don't want to forget about our sides. I'm coming over here and just kind of adding another layer, even if it's different. I'm not too worried about slightly different color. I am gonna move to my smaller brush though. Where do I put it? Here it is, my size 0 round brush, and I'm gonna go to in between those fingers. Another mixing. Same colors, cad yellow, fluorescent pink, and white.
Notice I'm leaving a little bit more pink in this color mix so that to separate this leaf from the bottom, I can make this slightly darker.
We're not going to paint in that whole leaf because of how it's angled, kind of like this one. So what I'll do is I'll paint the side here up until that hand. And then I'll do another side right here, but not painting that down.
The other reason why we want this a darker value orange or peach is so it contrasts from that very light yellow. If it's too light or too similar in value to that yellow background, add a bit more peach to darken that up.
All right, I'm going to jump over and work on this leaf and stem. Just the flat edge of this brush I can get in there, but if you feel more comfortable using a detail brush, you can do that. I'm not going to add any orange here. You'll see what we do with that, but I will add a little bit up here. So just a little orange there, leaving that white, and then I'll just paint this guy in, but I want to add more white to it. I want to make it a little bit less vivid, dilute it a little bit. And it's so small, I'm going to go back to my size 0 round brush to paint in this stem. So we have a base on all the leaves, pretty much, except for some of the white parts. And actually not all the leaves. We left this part out. Here's what I'm going to do for this bottom part is I'm going to use this darker orange to paint in the stem. One here. And I won't go all the way up, but I will paint the bottom of it with this orange. I'm cutting off some of this leaf. I'm just going back to some of that orange because I kind of went over it.
All right, so like I mentioned before with that little gap between these two leaves, the yellow and purple area, in this next step, I'll be covering that up with purple. It's up to you what you decide to place there. You can bypass this next step if you've already decided.
Now, this to me looks a little distracting. You know why I'm going to do purple instead? Because we have this beautiful lightness around the outside of the leaf. And that's why I washed off my brush. It's clean and damp now. And just with white and violet, so it's more like this color here without the pink. And since this is dry, that's what I'll do right here. I might make that a little bit lighter, just pulling in more white into it. Directly on the canvas, get that a little lighter.
Anytime you're working with a color, if you need to lighten it up, while it's wet, I recommend adding either white or a lighter color, or in this case, add more violet to darken it up, or another darker, more dominant color. While that's damp, you still have a lot of wiggle room to alter the value and change the color.
All right, so we're not going to get to that frog just yet. We're going to start adding green to the leaves. So let's mix up. We're going to do cadmium yellow with grass green.
Again, that's cadmium yellow with lots of grass green. We'll start with our darker green.
Yeah, a little bit more cadmium yellow. I think that's what I'll do for the darker green. And then I'll pick up some of that, just a little bit of it, for a lighter green that we'll add. And that's cad yellow with our mix of our green mixture with white.
So same colors as our last paint mixture, but with added cadmium yellow and white. This is our light green that we'll be using, and I'll be referring to it as our light green.
Now the other interesting thing we're going to do is add sky blue to these leaves. Okay, so I'm gonna pick up a little bit of this area below it is dried, and some sky blue.
So this is a teal we're making with our previous mixture of light green and added sky blue and adding white to it.
A little bit more white, a little bit more sky blue. Those are pretty highlighted, so I'll get more white in there. I think I'm going to start again. Size 6 Arteza flat brush. I'm going to start with the dark green. And what I'm going to do as I create these shapes within each leaf, I'm going to leave that stem. So I'm going to do that with this dark green first. And that's why this flat brush will help us create a line. I'm doing along that stem. You may or may not see your sketch line. I still see mine, but it's just cutting this leaf in half along the left and right sides.
We're going to get good use out of our flat brush here. We're going to practice using the long flat edge to create the stem using the negative space with the orange in the back. And then soon we'll be using the point of this flat brush, using it to create this wavy, bumpy texture of the inside of the leaf, leaving another border of orange.
I'm going to use the corner to get around that. But I am not, here's the thing on the outer edge, I'm not going all the way to the edge. I'm leaving this fun, bumpy texture along the outer edge as I work down with my green.
Let this fun, wavy texture kind of release some tension right now, allowing maybe some tight waves or maybe some wider, looser waves. Or maybe your creativity is nudging you to create a zigzag texture instead.
Yep, green is a little thin, and so we might have to add another layer later. Okay, and now on the other side, but we're going to do some blending. I'm actually going to start on the bottom part first, doing that bumpy texture on the other side. I'm going to, now I'm right-handed, so it's easy to do that line, so I'll use the other side to create that stem. So I'll fill in about that much on this leaf, but then jump to this blue-green, this teal, and use this as that highlight. And it's a lovely color, but I think we're going to have to lighten it up. So first what I'm going to do is just add it, blend it into some of those greens, and then we can lighten it up. And for that, I will be working in around these fingers, but not cutting off that stem line.
Now, why I'm using this lighter blue in this upper left corner is because if you notice in the reference, there is a strong highlight there. So instead of a light gray or any kind of white, I'm using light blue there.
We also are going to jump. I'm going to pick up some more, jump and add more of that highlight down here, but still doing some blending into those greens that we added. And then I see a little subtle highlight on this part of the leaf, which I'm going to blend into some of those greens. I'm actually going to take some off because I added a little too much blue and go back to my green.
So now I'm getting rid of those harsh lines between the highlight and the green. Plus, these are added layers of that dark green over top some of the areas we've already applied. This helps us create that contrast and also create that rich pigment.
All right, so I think I'm gonna go a little bit lighter now before that dries, but I'm gonna do a separate pile with white and sky blue. And where it's really getting highlighted, that's where I'm adding this. Gonna add a little bit more blue to that. And also cut into some more of those oranges. I'll add some along the stem. Pull some of that paint off so I can really get it lighter here. I'm gonna go with my size 0 round brush with the dark green.
So we're using our dark green again, doing some touch-ups, or maybe for you it's altering that texture. Now, sometimes what can happen with a detail brush like this while an area is still damp is it can pull off the paint. So it may take a few tries with the green to work on that border. And if you need to go back with your highlights in some of those areas, you can with the blue or the blue-green.
I'm gonna add a little bit more grass green with my detail brush right up here where it's getting a little darker. Next, we're going to go on this leaf now. And this isn't quite as dark as this one. So I think what I'll do is just add some up here where it's the darkest part.
So we're going to begin with our darker green, then pulling in some lighter values, but using this point to work around those little fingers, not going all the way to the edge because we want that orange border. Where we also want to leave orange, just like we did in the last leaf, is the stem. So I'm going to work on the vein of this leaf with the flat, longest edge of this flat brush.
And I'll just blend that with some of the darker greens up top that we just added. I'm not sure if I really like the value of this. I'm going to pull in some greens, blending it in with this lighter green. So the darker with the lighter, that's what we're using. All while adding, with the point of my brush, I'm adding that bumpy texture over top the orange. And into some of the lighter green on the bottom while I'm making this line for the stem. And some darker green, so I'm just kind of alternating and blending between the two greens. All right. So for this next one, I think I'll do the same. Start with a darker green. Even though it is lighter up here, it's gonna be what I start with and help me make that line on the other side of the stem. And in terms of perspective, this part of the stem is just slightly larger than this area because it's closer to us. So as I work up, I'm going to get that line a little thinner, just a very small bit thinner.
So for this leaf, I'm using my dark green now. I'll place the dark green and then mix in while that's wet the lighter green. You could even, in a separate pile, mix up these two colors and go with that. This is a bit of dark green and a bit of our light green. That's the color I'm using for this leaf. Now, if you take a look at your reference, you'll notice this leaf has wider gaps in our little wave border here. Compared to the last leaf, the peak and trough of that wave design is much larger. And for you, maybe this is a more authentic, realistic representation of your thought life. Maybe those waves of emotion have been gigantic, big highs and big lows. So I'm going to add a bit more highlight and a bit more color with our turquoise here, that blue-green mixture in this upper left area of this leaf.
Adding some as I work down. We're also seeing a bit of highlight on this side. And I'm leaving some texture. I love the texture. You don't need to overblend, overwork it. Try and leave some blue in that green where it's not all smoothed out and everything. And then I'll add some white. Actually, I think what I'll do first is wash my brush off so I don't add more green to it. Pick up some white with some sky blue. And get that extra strong and light by the highlight here.
I'll add more of this light blue in the lower right where we've already added that highlight, but I'll pull it out a bit more before it dries.
And even some down here. I went a little too light down there, so I'm going to wash off my brush, pick up some of the green, and soften those lines a little bit more. Before this orange dries, if there's any orange that you kind of want to touch up, I'm going to use my size Zero Arteza round brush. Here's this orange that we use for the border. A little too much water left on my brush. Got to get all that off when you're doing detail work. And I think what I want to do is like cut into some of those greens, kind of like we did here. I love that.
So this mixture is our fluorescent pink with cadmium yellow and white. You may find that you need to let the green dry before adding this.
I think I'm pulling in some green into there, so I'll let that dry and go back to it. And in the meantime, let's work on this area with our dark green. And we'll see how there's this white gap. Well, I'm going to fill that all in with our dark green and along the side. I even want to pull in some grass green into that because it's quite dark. And again, leaving a border on this side, but we're gonna like cut carefully in there. I might need my detail brush for that, but I can at least work on the other side. Yep, and once I get to there, I'll move to my size 0 round brush, grab the green. I'm steadying my hand right here.
So I'm gonna add a few more layers of our dark green to the leaves, not only this one, but let's do some touch-ups if we need to the other dark green areas on the leaves we've currently painted in. Now, as you're doing that, I want to share a quick sweet story that my husband told me the other day. So him and my daughter Anna Grace, what they love doing is going for walks, playing Pokemon Go. Now, what's funny is one day when they were out playing and walking, my husband Adam says, "Anna Grace, look, turtles." As my husband is standing there facing and pointing to these 2 baby turtles, my daughter Anna Grace is saying, where? And she's looking at Daddy's hands. Now, as she's jumping up frantically trying to see Daddy's hands and his phone, this actually is scaring away the baby turtles. So finally, my husband says, "No, Anna Grace, real life turtles." As awesome as it is hearing about Adam spending time with Anna Grace and then going for walks, being outside, I love that. The other side of that made me feel like, man, I am missing out on real life because of my phone. Just like my Anna Grace, I can be so quick and so frantic about reaching for my phone, checking it, scrolling it, getting lost in it, treating it like it's this treasure, this precious gold. Right now, I'm just adding more cad yellow so I can mix up the same dark green. But then when I'm overusing my phone, I often don't feel better. In fact, I feel comparison, more negative. I'm overthinking. And meanwhile, I am missing out on the precious gold in real life with my family.
So here we go. Adding some cadmium yellow to a good amount of grass green. I just want to add another layer to this. It's kind of looking a little thin. Notice how to help me not pull more paint off, I'm holding my brush like that instead of like that. I'm going to pull in a mixture. I have some of the dark green with the lighter green. And here's what I'm going to add on the bottom of that leaf. And again, leaving a border of our orange around it. Carefully working around here. Switching brushes again to my size 0 round brush. This is going to be nice because it's going to help us separate these 2 leaves with a thin line of green cutting in between. It helps to use your darker green for that.
So you can see I'm keeping it a bit darker, closer to that overlapping leaf, and then I'm going in with the light green at the front and adding a little bit more light value there, and then blending where they meet. Now, when we're focusing on filling in an area, it can be difficult to also add that bumpy, wavy texture. So that's what I'm going to do with our greens, just add a bit more texture to that far left leaf. Now, going back to my turtle story, thankfully Anna Grace was able to see those baby turtles right before they swam away. But I share that not to add to your guilt or any shame, condemn you, but help you to become aware like me that overdoing it with our phones is not really helping us. It's sabotaging our creativity, our joy, our peace. And so as you're painting, and then later when you have time, I recommend the journal reflections. This is going to grow your awareness. It's going to help you face this head on in a creative and gentle way. So as you're creating, I'd like you to give this some thought. These are also in your download. Identify a thought pattern or thought patterns you have when being on your phone.
Okay, so next we have this leaf. Let's start inside here with the darker green. And then inside at the bottom, we'll go in with our lighter greens and blues. It kind of helps to work along this edge, make that line, and then use maybe a detail brush to get in along the border.
So with my detail brush and our dark green, we're going to fill in the top area here, but working on a very thin, wavy border. But I won't bring this dark green all the way down because then we'll switch to, again, our flat brush with the turquoise, the blue-green.
And now pulling in some of this blue. This is our teal, not the lighter blue. I'll pull in some of the lighter green up here. See that white border, trying to get that edge looking nice. There we go. And I think I might thin this leaf out. I switched to my detail brush so I can pull this down and over. Oh, it's so beautiful. Such beautiful colors. I'm going to, again, start with our green, and I'm running out again, so I'm going to mix up some more. Cadmium yellow and grass green.
So with a steady hand and our flat brush, we're going to create that negative space, that vein in this triangular shaped leaf. I'll work on the right side and fill that in, leaving that border, and then on the left side. And this stem is at an angle. It doesn't go straight up.
And same on the other side, but a little bit more to paint in. The easiest way, I think, is, this way. Carefully leaving that line of orange for that stem. just to get that nice straight point. I'm going to use a detail brush to bring that down a little bit further, like that. All right, so we actually didn't finish this one. Not only did we not add our highlights of blue, and I mix up some more of our white and sky blue, but we also didn't do the other side. So I'm going to add some beautiful accents of blue, dab, dab, dab. There, lovely. Don't need much, less is more. But we'll go on with our light green, and I think we're gonna have to lighten it up, but we'll see. Let's try it out first. We'll see, let's paint it, and then we can decide. And just like we did here, leaving a border of orange.
So I'm going to add this green a little higher and over top the orange at the top of this leaf, and then work down. Now switch to your detail brush if you need to and feel more comfortable, because at the top we're going to use our light green to fill in that stem and fill in over top the orange on that curving portion.
Why not? While we're here, let's just get that with my detail brush, bring that all the way down. I'll do that there, and then let's see, whoop.
Now, because that orange stem on this leaf is so close in value to the pinks in the background, we're gonna add some contrast with this green, and I'll bring it all the way up to the top, but kind of join it carefully with the dry brush technique. So spreading what little paint I have up there and joining it with some of those greens for the inside of the leaf.
I brought that green up a little bit with the dry brush technique so it's not super dark up there. And on the other side.
So if you're new to my tutorials and you're not sure what the dry brush technique is, it's a focus on the amount of paint on your brush. So you use what little paint you have on your brush to apply a thin layer.
And for that leftover bit of white, we're going to mix up a light yellow. So I'm just mixing up in a corner with my detail brush. This is white with some cad yellow.
Again, that's cadmium yellow and white, and we'll fill in the rest of the white on this leaf, blending it up into our orange.
And you know what? I'm going to use that. I'm actually going to pull in some of the peach into that and lots more cad yellow so it's more yellow than the peach. And I'm going to go over this area. Needs a bit more yellow. So this is an area that I thought I was going to add orange to it, but I'm going to actually add a little bit more yellow to it. I won't go all the way up, but a little further up. I'll do the same right here. This area is going to be much darker, so this is going to be perfect. Add even more lightness there to add contrast. Really pulls out those purples, so I'm going to go all the way down with this light yellow orange by the purples down here. I'll add some right on this side by the purples on this side, and up where we have that highlight. There's definitely a highlight there, so even more white to this yellow. There is an edge that we can use this yellow another place. A small little thin edge right here over top some of the oranges. I don't know if this is showing up too well. Maybe it's not a good fit. Well, I'll just paint in the bottom with this yellow and then fade it. How about that? It'll be a fade into that orange up there. I think another good place is right up here on this leaf with the yellow. Just on that side. And then maybe add a bit more of the orange.
Now, similar to the stem on this leaf, to help separate the values, we want to add a little bit slightly darker peach color here than before. And so that's with a little bit more fluorescent pink in there. That's cadmium yellow, white, and fluorescent pink to add this darker value peach.
All right, so I've added the colors raw umber, this is burnt sienna, this is raw sienna, orange, grass green, and cad yellow. So I just refreshed those two colors and added these new ones so we can work on Mr. Froggy now. So we're going to do something that I actually have recently started doing more of, and that's to create a base color. I like to use pink. So you're going to need, I have my size 4 Arteza round brush. I'm going to add a very thin base of pink, and we're going to actually leave some of those pinks shining through below the frog with a mix of white and fluorescent pink.
Again, that's white and fluorescent pink, and I'm going to pull in water from my cup of water so we can apply a wash. It's a very thin layer of paint, still allowing us to see our drawing from underneath. So if you're having trouble seeing your drawing, add more water. If it's too thin and it's just dripping off your canvas, add a little bit less water, more paint. And sometimes, especially when you have a graphite pencil that's very soft, this can kind of smudge that pencil a little bit, so you may need to use a detail brush. Or if you filled in the pupils like I did, just leave out the pupils and paint around them.
Add some more water. Sometimes you might need to revisit that water so it's, again, that thin layer so we're not covering up the whole drawing. I'm not going to go down here. I'm just going to go to about there with the pink. But I am going to carefully work around. I'm not even going to go in that pupil because of the drawing is seeming to be a little tricky to add a wash over top without it smudging too much. So while we let that dry, that area dry, I'm going to work on this gap. All right, and so for that, I'm going to switch to my size 1 round brush. This is the larger one from the variety pack. And I'm going to do a mix between raw umber, and I want it kind of a warmer color. So I'm going to do burnt sienna with raw umber. And this is really dark. I'm going to test this out, see how this works. It is pretty dark. Yep, I'm going to work that now in between the leaves and down, but not all the way down.
So I'll bring this dark brown down to a point right above the stem, and we want to work wet into wet with the next steps so we can blend it in with some green.
In a separate pile, just put it right here, cad yellow, grass green, and a little smidge of white. A little bit more grass green just so it's not too light. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend it into some of these browns with this green. Over top some of that orange outline that we did. And I'm just going to have it fade into that orange. See how I did that? So I'm blending this very dark brown. I pulled some of it off in with this green. I'll pull a little bit more green up. I'm doing circular motions to blend that in. And then I think I'm going to wash off this brush. So I'm going to move to our green. I'm going to add a little bit of white to it just to lighten it up and a bit more cad yellow. I'll paint that in green. I'll paint this in green too. I'm going to test this out, see how it works if I made this. I'm leaving a little bit of orange there too.
So I'm mostly painting in the center of this stem, leaving a very thin border of orange on the outside.
And we want this to be dry. I don't want it to be super wet as we're working over top the pink.
Next, I'm going to switch to my size 0 spot brush, my size 0 Arteza spot brush. In a small little pile, I'm going to mix up raw umber with a bit of white. That's raw umber with white to outline and fill in the eyes.
Straight raw umber, yeah, that's what we'll use for the pupils. And I'm ever so carefully going to outline the side of both eyes. And I'll do the other side. We want these eyes symmetrical. So about almost the same size.
I'm just adding more raw umber to our mixture, and I'll fill in both pupils. This eye is poking out pretty far. We don't want it a straight drop, but a nice curve.
And this goes in pretty far, the point of this eye.
Now continue working, but for our next step, I just want to talk a little bit about value. If you need a little refresher, color value is how light or how dark a color is. I like to simplify it and say, let's shoot for a dark value or a medium value or a light value. Now there's a wide range of dark, medium, and light values. There's lots of different values that sit within those 3 different categories. There's going to be times when we think it looks like a dark value on our paint palette, but then it turns out it's not dark enough. So then while it's wet, we can add more of a dominant color. For example, when we were working on the leaves, if I needed to darken it up, I just add in more grass green. If I need to lighten it up, I added sky blue and some white.
So we're going to let that dry and maybe do some touch-ups after we paint in the area around it. But let's work on the green area of a frog. I'm going to start with, we're going to kind of do some similar greens as what we were using for the leaves. So I'm going to mix up cad yellow with grass green. And I'll add a little bit of white to it. I should probably use my palette knife for this, but...
So I'm mixing up a medium value green, not too bright light yellow, but not too dark green.
All right, same brush. This is a size 0 spot brush. You can use a larger brush if you want to. I'm going to use this one with this green to start now painting around those eyes. Now this green doesn't come over top of the eye too much. Those eyes are kind of bulging out, but it is right above it. Scoops down, and then for that flat head, and then back up again on the other side. Again, that eye is very rounded, sticking out. But what we want is this to be on the same plane. All right, now the other side at the bottom left side of the eye. And I'm going to go down to the left side of the arm, okay? I'm going to just paint this corner in green right above the hand. And then work my way up. I'm going to paint now around the nose, and so the right side is getting hit with a bit more light. We also have some on the left side, but I say there's stronger highlight on the right side of the face. So I'm going to work this medium to dark green on the left side up until about the mouth. So here's our line. I'll paint this green above that. So what I'll do is I'll scoop this line a little bit over around the nose like that, and then above here, so I'm kind of leaving a bit of a circle. And remember, this is not going to sit in the very center. I'm even going to pull this over here. It's off to the right a little bit more because of the angle of the frog's face. So I see a little bit of a darker area here in between the nose and the eye, the right eye. I'm going to add a bit of white to a corner of this and a bit more cad yellow to lighten up this green. Paint on the right side of the nose and a little bit on the left so we can kind of block in those light values, and then move over to the right. Now I'm working along that right eye with the light green. And then see how we left off right above the mouth here? I'll just pick up with where we left off with this lighter green. I'm actually going to extend, I'm going to use this green to help extend this area of the face. I'm just bringing it over to the right a bit more, closer to that hand. And then I'll paint this right side of the face with this light green. And a little over, see how I kind of cut that nose? I have a little bit of the pink showing, but with that, washing my brush off, I'll go back to the darker green and paint that in.
See how I left the littlest bit of medium value green on the top left of this nose? This can be difficult to see if your medium value isn't quite light enough or it's too dark. So if you need to, add a bit of yellow or white just to indicate where that nose is, and separate it from the top of the face.
All right, so if you remember our mixture of burnt sienna and raw umber, let's bring it on up, same color, bring it on up from where we left off, up a little higher. I'm going to work around these little fingers here and around these leaves, but I'll stop kind of around here where I'm making this little line. Move brush. But on the right side, I'll bring this brown mixture up along the right side of the face. ever so carefully, right by the right side of the face that's resting on the leaf and a bit of the hands. Over top that finger. Now I am going to start blending some green into this brown. I'll move this over by that arm a little bit more, pull in some green so that I can start darkening up this area.
Now I pulled in some of the medium value green, just a little bit, to do this blending.
I'm going to, in a separate pile, pull some of this green in with the dark brown and work into a corner here. All right, but now we need to kind of mix up our colors for this bottom area. So I see pink in here, I see green in here. I'm gonna actually, I'm gonna do a mixture of the raw, this is raw sienna with white and a bit of our pink, fluorescent pink.
So that's fluorescent pink, a good amount of raw sienna, and white.
And what I'm gonna do is blend that underneath here. I'm doing these circular motions, blending some of that into the brown and up around this scooping area around the neck. And I'll blend that down. So let's continue on. I'll actually add a bit more fluorescent pink and white for the top part into that raw sienna and pink mixture. All right, so now I'm working on the left side of the face. Oops. And leaving this area, leaving that lip, but notice how it's thicker on this part of the lip. And then it gets a little thinner. I'm going to bring it up higher there. And bring it over, making sure this gets a little thicker right by that hand before it touches the hand. So I want to carry this on underneath that like bump, the bottom part of the neck. This is going to be our base, and it's darker on this side, so I'm just filling it in on the left side. But I need more of that brown, so I'm going to pull in a little bit of the brown so we can shape this area a bit better. A shadow right underneath here. I'm going to pull in even more dark brown to get this little area darker. And pulling in more of that so I can put it underneath here. And if you notice, watch me first. We have a line that goes down. It should kind of connect, not connect, but be right above this point here. I'm going to pick up some more and fill in this little triangular shaped shadow right there. And a little bit of a shadow right here, but blending that into some of those brownish pinks. So I am darkening this up, pulling those browns into some of the brownish pinks on the left side. I'm going to remix this color. This is where we used fluorescent pink and raw sienna and white. I want to make sure I don't get any blue in there. I'm going to add more pink to it and more white. Let's test this out. Yep. I'm going to fill this area in.
Now that triangular shaped shadow is a bit too dark, plus I want to add a tint of pink to it. So without entirely getting rid of that shadow, I'm going to cover it with this lighter pink brown.
That shadow's a bit on the dark side, so we have to darken up the left side. So go back to this mixture of a raw umber with the fluorescent pink and raw sienna, the original one, and darken up this area on the left side. There's this area here, the shadow, right above it and over.
With this dry brush technique, I'm adding another layer of this brown over that pink just to slightly darken it.
I'm going to pull in more raw umber into a corner of that so I can darken up here and here. Even more to get that like almost like a line. Now I'm going to go back to this green before it dries, and I kind of want to add back in some green right here. It's not very big space to add this green, but just a little subtle bit of green right in there. I also want to blend in a bit of green that I'm seeing right here into the pink. Just a little bit of green right there in the side. And I want to reshape this because this doesn't look quite right to me. I'm going to take some of our brown mixture.
That's going back to our brown pink. So that's raw umber, fluorescent pink, and white. This is definitely darker, and I'm raising up that shadow up around that hand.
Now let's take this values, take this a bit of raw umber in with this brown pink, and ever so carefully,
we're going to create a separation line for that mouth between the green and our light pink base. This is a really thin line, so keep that hand as steady as you can.
there's like a little tiny dip right here in the mouth. It's like goes up so tiny little dip and then back up. All right, I'm going to mix up pink with fluorescent pink and white. I'll add no raw sienna this time. I'm going to extend out this pink, give it a little smile, slight little smile on the left side, and extend this out a little further over top some of that green that I made for that outline, where I pulled out the face just over a little more. But because it curves down on the right side, I'm going to use some of the light pink. I just went straight in. I have a little bit of pink on there. This is the green. And bring that down, curving down a little. There. Ooh, perfect. I have some green and some pink on my brush. And dab, 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 a little bit of a highlight there.
So I have a little bit of our light green that we mixed up and some of our light pink on my brush. And to indicate moisture and also the bumpy texture of this frog, I'm going to add these very small little dabs and dots on both the left side and the right.
And guess what? There's a highlight that I can add in with this light pink, so I'm washed off my brush. Add a little small highlight right here. See, it's like right by the finger. We don't have a finger there yet, but we're going to add that in later. But a little highlight there. And see how there's just a little crease in the skin? So I'm going back to our mixture of brown, pink, and raw umber. Made a line that's more horizontal, and then another shadow for the neck that like cuts into that. Right here, and then there. All right, let's add some highlights to the green area of the frog. So I'm going to mix up yellow into our green. Actually, let's start fresh because that has some pink in it. So we have yellow, cadmium yellow, bit of grass green, not too much, and white. More grass green to lighten that up. All right, more white too. Just got to get that a light lime green. And once you've got it, let's add some highlights. And this is going to take some patience, lots of layers to get these really standing out. So once you have it, we're going to first add a light outline around the eye. Yeah, see, it's not quite light enough. Add more white to it. An outline by the right, around the right eye. We have a highlight on that nostril. We're going to pull out that highlight more than we did the last time. And over. I'm actually going to bring it up. That nostril comes up a little higher.
Now in this phase, when we're mapping out the values, trying to guess its relative lightness or darkness, it's hard. It's a bit of uncertainty. That's normal. If it looks and feels a little funky, you're doing it right. So just be patient.
I'm going to do a highlight around this left eye, but not over top the dark brown outline.
So just in case you didn't remember, we used dark brown to outline these eyeballs. So this highlight will sit to the right of that on this left eye.
All right, we see a highlight right along this side of the face, and it connects with this nostril here. I'm actually going to bring that up a little higher. I'm going to add a highlight here along the right side of the face. It's definitely getting a lot of light. We have another highlight that's interesting. It's just damp frog skin here. And it highlight that goes up along, but leaves a gap of that darker green in between. So if you watch me I started at the base of this left eye and moved up. And then right above here on that left eye, there's a highlight. Now we're also, let's add a little bit of grass green into that, a little bit of grass green to darken it up. And we're going to add that to the very top of the head and join it to the front of the nose and over. There's the tiniest little nostril that I'm going to get in with raw umber. Actually, I'll get in some orange into that raw umber. And we're going to add that. See how we had that highlight that we just added that went up from the base bottom of the left eye? Well, right there is where that little nostril is. I'm just going to add the smallest little line on the other side for the other nostril.
Now we will be covering up that right nostril with the highlight, but this placement helps us to place that highlight later.
All right, I'm going to add more grass green to that lime green to darken it up a little. Once more, darken up, even more. Add a bit of darkness right here above the right eye, but not too much. You don't want to get that too dark. And not going all the way to that highlight that we just painted in. We don't want to cover that up. I'll use that same green to darken up this gap in between those two highlights we just made on this side of the face. And with the dry brush technique, just a subtle little shadow on the right side. And that same dark green we can use to darken up right here. Just darkening up those dark values. We already added a dark green, but we're going to get that even darker here. And then also right on that arm, which I'll extend out a little further, by the way. Just going to curve it and extend it out a little further. And I missed something. There is I'm going back to my light green because I missed the highlight right up here. I have to bring that up a little higher. And while I'm here, I'll just add another layer. See how I wrap that highlight down more? We want that wrapped around both eyes. And in fact, I'll add white to this right side and more cad yellow so that that really stands out on the brighter end. And with that lightness, I can even add that on the right side again. And what I'll do with that same light value, do you notice how there's a slight little highlight around that nostril and up a little? And you know what? I even need to brighten up the right side again after doing that. So I'm covering up my work and adding a really strong highlight right there. And another layer on the right side. So I'm going to mix in some of the medium green into that white so that I can add a subtle little highlight on the head. And this like touches the top of the nose. It goes to the top of the nose and over to the right. And even a little bit above the left eye. I'm going to test something out going in with my dark green because I think I see a little bit of a shadow right here on the nose.
These changes in value are pretty tight on this froggy face. I'm just adding this very thin line of dark green, but it's got more of that medium value green in there, so it's not really dark to separate the nose from the top of the head.
I'm going to go in with this medium green above the left eye, and I need to brighten up that highlight once more. I'll add a very light green highlight here. Dab, dab, dab there. And let's go in with a little bit of pink. So I'm going to add some pink with white, pull in some green, and dab, dab, dab around the front of the face with this mix of light green and pink.
So this is adding texture and indicating more about that light source location, and I'm adding this more on the right side center of the front of the nose. Now right where that area kind of dips down, and that's where those dots become more of a bold line and then trails back off into dots.
I'm going to have to go back with some of my raw umber to outline. I went over my outline a little bit. And that reminds me, let's mix up some more. So that's raw sienna with white and fluorescent pink. I'll pull in some raw umber into that. There we go. Thinning out this bottom lip and bringing it over. But not going over that dark outline that we already made. I'm actually just thickening up that curving shadow there. And there. Let's also use this to bring down a little bit of that lightness here on the belly. And right here where we created that little fold in the skin. And below that. I want to blend that in with some of our raw umber and burnt sienna mixture.
Okay, so this is our burnt sienna and raw umber mixture. We're just adding another layer to richen up the darkness right here in between these two middle leaves. And with our brown pink, I'm bringing down that medium value into those dark browns. More of these tiny little circular motions to blend wet into wet.
Aha, so let's move in with a mixture of our pinkish brown with the raw umber and burnt sienna.
Using that to cover up a bit of this green that I left here. Then right below there with our darkest brown mixture, I know this might seem pretty dark, but we're gonna work this in underneath the left side of that curving line for the bottom of the neck.
Oh, and a little bit on the right side too.
With our mixture of dark browns, I'm also going to work that to the direct left of that leaf and that hand and over a little bit on the right side.
And since we did that, let's darken up this left side with the glaze. So I'm going to take some of this with more water. I'm adding more water to it. And this is our burnt sienna with raw umber. Adding a glaze to add a tint of darkness without going over all that highlight over the left side. We also have a little bit of tint we can add to the right side below that highlight.
So while you're working, let's just do a quick recap of what we went over. I added more water from my cup of water into a separate pile, pulling some of our dark brown mixture of burnt sienna and raw umber. It diluted that brown, so I added a tint of brown to darken up the left and right sides of this neck area. This is a great technique to add a tint of darkness or lightness to an area, or even alter the color just slightly.
I know what it needs. This needs to be brought up a little bit more. So just with the regular raw umber and burnt sienna mixture, there we go. I'll shape that, bringing that bump up a little higher. Going back to my raw umber and burnt sienna, darkening this corner up above that hand. And I think before this green dries, let's go in with our lighter, it's a medium green. So it's got a little bit of our lime green and white mixed with our darker green. Let's lighten up this part of the leaf that this froggy is sitting on. Maybe even a little bit more lightness. And down. And let's paint those eyes. That'll, I think, also help us that much more. So I'm going to dip into our orange finally. So that's orange, white, and cadmium yellow. Orange, white, and cadmium yellow. I'll start on the darkest eye first. I'm actually going to not fill in the whole area up until the pupil, because I can go lighter there with a lighter yellow. So I'm going to pause from that orange for a second. I have a little bit of white left, and that's where I'll use cadmium yellow. I'm losing space here. So many beautiful colors. Cadmium yellow with white. Blending that in with the orange. See how I'm kind of pushing the orange out by adding more and more yellow. I'll even wipe my brush off to pull off that orange so I can go in with a lighter, this light yellow. And I'll do the same thing on the right side, but adding a bit less orange because of how much light it's getting. I'll just do the outline like this. And then the rest I'll fill in with the orange, and I might, or the yellow. Yeah. And you know what? I'm running out of yellow, so I'm gonna pull some cad yellow and more white, even intentionally adding more white to get that lighter, to fill in the rest of the white around that pupil. More white, because there's a highlight here. I'm blending that into the yellow I've already added and a highlight below there. I'm gonna mix that white in with some of the yellow so it's not as bright, but still highlight on the left eye and below it. I think I have to lift up that pupil, the right eye pupil.
And that's using raw umber with a tiny bit of white. That's raw umber with a bit of white. Now here's another great example of how mistakes can be portals to discovery. I thought what it needed was to be raised up, this pupil on the right eye. Turns out that's not what it needed, but that mistake led me to what it did, which is to slightly darken up the orange area, not cutting into the yellow on this right eye. I'll show you.
Even just a little bit of raw sienna and white. I'm going to add the smallest little shadow above that right eye. Just to round that eye out a little bit more. Because now I think I've taken it out a little too far.
Now you might not need this step, but I'm going to take my light yellow, bring back down that right pupil.
Now before this light green dries, I'm going to also do a subtle little highlight, and that's right up, curving around that right nostril, like over the nostril. Okay, so now for the hand, we're going to use similar colors, dark values like we did here inside the hand on both sides. So I'm going to do raw sienna, mix up some more with their fluorescent pink and white. That's raw sienna, fluorescent pink and white. And into a corner of that, I'll add some raw umber to get this dark area. That's a little too dark. Yep. So I want to pull in a little bit more of that raw sienna and pink. So this is in between the fingers and on the bottom of the hand. I'll do that on both sides. I'm noticing I kind of left some yellow or even green. I can pull up the yellow there.
Now for this next part, we'll need our medium green. So if yours has dried, that's grass green, cadmium yellow, and a good amount of white. Not light green, not dark green, a medium green. And we'll fill in the top part of these 3 fingers, leaving some white. So take notice to where I'm leaving it white.
But I'll use that same green, that light green, right over here on the left hand. For our next color, I'm going to add a separate mixture with more white and fluorescent pink and a bit of raw sienna. And that's what we'll use. So I want this pretty pink because it's getting hit by light. And we'll just fill in the circular part of the fingers first. And then all the way up to that green. I'll lift up this finger so it does cut up more into that part of the face. And now this part. And speaking of which, I'm going to bring down this highlight. Since we know now where that finger is, I'm using this color to add a highlight there. Oh, and look at that. I can connect this highlight here on the side of the face. That helps. The same color we used for the fingers. I brought this down, connected it to this highlight here. And another place I can add this same value is right here. And a little bit right there.
I'm going to spread that paint around over that shadow a bit more so it adds that glaze effect, lightening it up, but not getting rid of it entirely. All right, creatives, so the next steps are going to be adding more contrast, darkening up our darks, lightening up our lights, and adding accent colors. Color graffiti that adds a little bit more interest and color and hope to our piece here.
I'm going to grab my 4/0 round brush, small little brush for this. And we're going to use blue, sky blue, with our white to add a subtle highlight over top both eyes. All right, so over top the right eye, not on the far right, but in a little. I'll do the same thing, but curving. See that this is kind of curving around that pupil. I'm going to do the same thing, but in the opposite direction. And this sits more in the middle. And that goes over top the middle. And it does kind of come down a bit further over top the right eye. So we do that highlight with the blue first. And then a little bit more white to lighten that up. A little bit more white in there. I only want a small amount on my brush. And just a subtle little highlight on the left side too, but stronger on the right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out some of the green dots on that side and maybe a little bit on the right. Let's discover. Okay, so I'm going to mix in some of my yellow with grass green and white. Make a light green so that we want a lot of cadmium yellow and white. Just add a little bit more of both. And dab, 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 little highlights of this light green over top the far left side. Even bringing some of those dots down. Aha, I see another highlight we can add here with dabs of light green. I'll even add some below there and far to the left. But you know what? I'm going to add more white and yellow to the ones on the right side. But I am going to push down on my brush with this light green right here for this highlight on the right side. And I want to do the same thing, but with pink. I'm going to add little accents of light pink. So that's fluorescent pink and white. Subtle little dabs of light pink. I'm going to add more white to lighten that up. I don't want too many. Okay, these are much smaller, more subtle. I'm going to pull some of it off with my finger. I'll add a bit more on this side because that gets highlighted right around here. So I'm going to mix up more of our mixture of raw sienna, fluorescent pink, and white with more fluorescent pink this time. Ever so carefully, and I'm just going to add the smallest amount of that light pink right below here and a little bit right here in the chest.
When I want a thin layer, I'll often pull some off with my finger. Can be another tool when painting.
And I don't think green belongs there. I actually am going to add more white to it because I think it's this color that we're using right on our brush now. That's more appropriate. This is what fits there. I might add a few dabs over here just to highlight more on that left side. There we go. And you know where else? Let's add even more white to that. And what we can do is add highlights to this finger, these hands. So there's a highlight on the right side.
So on the right side of these three fingers, I'm adding a long, thin line, and then it comes down a bit more center placement for this highlight on the rounded part at the end of each finger.
And then a line that comes down on the right side of the far left finger. And a little highlight on the bottom. I'll bring this up a little higher up here. And then on the left hand, we'll do the same thing. We can't really see anything on, but we do have indication that the light source is strongest on the right. So we'll bring that highlight even over top the green part of the finger and down. Now, a little trick for erasing, I added a little bit too much here, so I took a wet brush, and now I'm just gonna pick up some of what I painted there. There, and it's almost like an eraser. There we go. Then we're gonna add shadows around those fingers. So let's add some raw umber to a corner of that brown pink. I'll add some more raw sienna and pink to that. Bit more raw sienna. And ever so carefully, I'm going to draw a line along the far left side over top the leaf now. On the middle finger. One around the other finger. And then a strong shadow below the far right finger with this dark brown. This could even wrap around underneath here. I just a little dry brush technique. What little paint I had left on my brush, I painted up there too. Now for the other fingers, we'll do the same thing on the far left side of those fingers. Want that shadow on the leaf around the left side. Now there's a little bit of light green that we can paint in, so I'll go back to our light green. I'll add more cadmium yellow and just a tiny bit of green, grass green to it. Lighten up the right side of the top of the hand with the light green. And on this hand too. So on the right side where we added those highlights over top the green part, and same with this hand too. Now you ready for some really fun little accents? Now before this green dries, I'm actually going to bring this green down. I'm going to add more grass green and cadmium yellow to it just to darken that up a little. I'm going to both highlight this part and make this leaf less thin. I'm going to actually widen it, just so it kind of looks like the frog is sitting on it. Add more grass green to that to darken up that green. So we can add a bit more of a darker green around this stem on this leaf. Because the other reason is these are too close in value, so this kind of helps to separate this area with the darker green. Plus, there's pink behind it, so it adds further contrast there. I'll do another layer. Maybe another bit more, a little darker. You see how some of these areas look thin? I don't really like that they're that thin. It bothers me quite a bit. So I'm gonna pull yellow into this and some grass green. Get that original dark green color. Add another layer. And we'll do that on all the leaves, anywhere where you see it pretty thin green. In fact, I'll probably bring the green up. Yep, that little white area that I left. I'll bring that green up and around. I could definitely be using a larger brush for this. And I will do that. I'll go to my size 1 round brush, not that much larger. If you only want to add a tint, you can add a glaze like I'm doing. There's just a little bit of water on my brush with the green. Some areas that you just want to darken up, add a tint of green. But now I'm just mixing up more of that green to add a solid layer on this side. I don't want that to get too dark. I'm going to add a little bit of cadmium yellow. Yep. And if you still have, see, mine's dry with the turquoise, so I'm going to pull in some into a little bit of this lighter green, sky blue into that. Just because that area we added the blues, and I think we'll add a bit more blue in a little bit. Speaking of which, I'm going to pull in some of this bluish green at the bottom here on the more orange side that we added. Also brings out the oranges in the eyes, but then I'll go back to that green and continue touching some of that green up. I'll even get that pretty dark here. So here I go, sky blue with my round brush and some white, and let's add some beautiful subtle accents. Color graffiti over top the leaf. I'm going to add somewhere where I already added the blues, kind of like dab it a little bit more. Make that a little lighter with white on this area. If you need to, like, smudge it with your hand. Or you can darken it up by adding more sky blue. See, that's a little too prominent. So you can grab your grass green.
Now make this your own. You can add as many or as few of these as you want. Try a different color, use a different design. This is up to you.
have my light blue and I'm actually blending it to the bottom there. Once more, another layer. I'm going to add another layer of green, grass green with a little bit of white. Maybe get that a little bit lighter because it kind of looks almost like it's dipping in on both sides even. So let's add some sky blue to our green like we did here. We'll just add a little hint of blue just so it doesn't look like it's dipping down.
So I mixed up sky blue with some cadmium yellow into a tiny bit of our medium green that was there. This is just slightly lighter, but not too much compared to that dark green that we originally applied on these leaves.
And then I'll add, I think, another glaze of raw umber. Okay, so I have a watered down brush. I have my raw umber. Add another glaze just to darken up right here. A smidgen more. Especially over this line, I don't want to make that line so prominent. I'm going to add a little highlight of pink. So that's fluorescent pink and white. Right over top, the very, very top of these lips on the left and right sides. Very carefully. And this wraps around to the far right side. And this kind of goes up. And while we have our pink, I'm going to draw out some of these accents. Too dark? I want to be careful that I don't get this too light or too dark compared to the pink we already added. So I might pull some off with my finger just based on how it comes out.
Now again, play with this, see what it looks like, test it out, and if you don't like it, you could always remix the background color and paint over it.
Last but not least, I think I might do another layer of the burnt sienna with raw umber. Right there. And then do a little touch up. I got some brown over top the yellow. So that's cad yellow with white. And I might do some more yellow. Another layer on this side, right where I added a layer before.
And that about wraps it up. Those are the last brush strokes with the light yellow to the leaves. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you made it your own. Can you do me a favor and let me know how or if or the details about what you thought about this tutorial? It helps me in making future tutorials. Leave that in the comments down below. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.